Hello. Good day, everyone.
Hi, welcome everybody. Glad you're joining us from wherever you are in the world today. So, good day, good morning, good evening, good night. Stanley, another interesting conversation coming up here
Well,
today.
first of all, I think that we have to say that thank you for everybody joining in because we
That's
just keep
true.
getting more and more people, and a lot of one third of you are new to our live event. So we should make our introductions up to talk about why we are here. Sean, I'll
Yeah,
pass that to you.
we talk so often we get used to everybody knowing who we are. So I'm Sean Mahoney. I'm Vice President of NetSwitch. I deal with a lot with the customer side because I was a customer of NetSwitch for 14 years before I decided to join them and bring my expertise and experience in business management and risk management into what NetSwitch does.
And I'm Stanley Lee, CEO and founder of NestSwitch. And in Asia, we call ourselves Securely over there. And I have been doing this for 30 years, and NestSwitch has been around for 23 years. And 18 of that, we have been working on cybersecurity. So we have quite some time, in this field, and so we're not new. And so, anyway, why we're here is we are here to share our insight with cyber risk governance. So, how goes from IT to cybersecurity, or back then, my days, is called network security, and which I still like that.
You're
Like a
aging
lot
yourself
about
there.
network. Yeah, I know. No kidding. Actually, there's network management on my certificate, not even security. Anyway, so from that point onwards, we got involved with the auditing. So we find out there is a lot of business drivers coming from the auditing and the governance world. So, and then now, of course, we see that it becomes cyber risk management.
Right.
And we have talked about things like cyber insurance as the last line of defense. So, in the last year, 2 years, actually 3 years now, we started this subject doing podcasts called Cybersecurity Chronicle on our
Yep.
podcast. And then we led into building the LinkedIn group. That's why you found us, and we have been doing live events for some time. And our purpose and our goal is to share our insights and share, hopefully, that you can share your insight and how do you practice between technical implementations, GRC implementation, and tied it all together based on the NIST 8286 called Integrated Cybersecurity into Enterprise Risk Management. So that's been our theme for this year, and that's why we're driving this conversation, is because it's relatively new, even though I'm old and I've been aged in this field. But there's a lot of new topic, and of course today we're talking about AI. Who's not going to talk about AI
Right.
nowadays? And just to be on the record, I am tired of it. But anyway, it is something that is
I
changing
was
what we
gonna bring that
do.
up, Stanley. When we were talking about this, you're like, "Oh, I do not want to talk about this. I'm so over this." And quite honestly, for those of us that are in the cybersecurity space, we have been dealing with the availability of AI and advanced machine learning and the introduction of neural networks into what we do. But the fact that ChatGPT has come along, now it's suddenly into the mainstream and this huge interest in AI and what's going to happen with it. And this generative language stuff that is ChatGPT is a variation of the AI we've been dealing with. But it is an interesting topic. It is a hot topic to talk about, but it's also an important topic to understand where it's going to go. I was at the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meeting recently, and somebody asked Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger what they thought about this ChatGPT and AI. What was it going to do to everything? And Charlie Munger said, "I don't know." He goes, "Good old fashioned intelligence has been pretty good for us thus far." But not all of us are graced with the intelligence of Mr. Buffett, Mr. Munger. So we have to rely upon some tools. And yeah, as you said, you're over this. But you've done a lot of work with the data scientists that we work with, and the vendors on the technical side that deal with the AI. And so yeah, you've been dealing with this a long time.
Yeah, and
So
just to give credit to Cisco. I heard it this morning from the Cisco world, and they are talking about putting, chat generative AI into policies and procedures, and which is exactly what we're doing right now.
Right.
So this is something that, yes, is part of it is not just about, the intelligent level of our the practitioners, is really I think that what we emphasizing on as Nest, which first of all, we are vendor neutral, not just because
Yep.
we are selling Cisco. We are vendor neutral. We don't care what kind of equipment, including open source. We welcome that and put that into a single pane of glass. And the key thing what we wanted to talk about in the AI, what at least my view, is the contextual correlation, right?
Right.
So that ties in into what you just talked about, Sean, is the contextual correlation, which we have been working on it for the last few years. As a matter of fact, because of this live event, I took up some notes. It was back in 2014 that we already talked about it. But why are we coming into full circle? And today we're still trying to sell the basic IT, basic cybersecurity, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. And one of our mission and vision is to elevate connaissance. And why did we put that vision there? And our mission
Right.
is basically to elevate people's knowledge and awareness about what is going on in IT. We're not here just to fix the mouse and change the battery of the mouse. And my favorite story. And then how does that correlate into cybersecurity, into GRC, and now into risk management? And all using these types of tools to get involved and making sure that we are not going to be, you know, because of the technology, it can drive into a different direction.
Right.
After all, AI is still not that intelligent yet.
No.
So we are not talking about, I never look at it as AI as artificial intelligence. I think, yes, it will come, but it will be decade away. And just like the autonomous driving, and people in the industry, experts in the industry, thought that we could have autonomous driving earlier because they said, well, if we take all the human driver out of the road, we would have autonomous drivers, autonomous driving now,
Right.
because AI is predictable. It's all, in a sense, is based on rule. Of course, we're not talking about the sci-fi movie. They go rogue and start doing crazy things. But in our world at this point, that AI is still have to interact with human intelligence.
Right.
So how AI helping us, and of course we tied it back to this topic about how does that help with the security incidents response playbook that comes into our world. We basically put all the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you go in all the acronyms into one pod. Yes, it's a people commented, talk about our cyber risk governance. Whoa, it sounds like you're tackling a huge elephant. Yes, it sounds like that.
Right.
However, when we break it down, I think, I just try to break it down into a more higher level. If you look at IT as IT, cybersecurity is cybersecurity, then there are lots of tool sets,
Hmm.
not just AI, but even within the tool sets that they applying AI into helping to do the job faster. And I think that the whole point where I lead to is, yes, there is the augmented intelligence
Yep.
is the very important part. How the human interventions to making sure the AI is learning properly. If they don't learn properly from us, and that would take years, if not decades, to go into doing the right thing, there would be no artificial intelligence. And even if there is, I think that those companies are just lying to you, because it's just there are not enough data to do the contextual correlations. And that's why, going back into my point, going back into full circle, why we're still going and selling professional developments, penetration tests, vulnerability assessment tools, because that, again, borrowing the autonomous driving, there's a lot of human interactions based
Right.
on their cognizant level. And if somebody do not have that knowledge or experience and basically configure a window environment in the wrong way or not according to benchmarking, that's a hole right there. And yes, eventually AI will help to pick that up and, telling you, hey, you didn't do it right. But at this point in time, there's still those fundamental human errors that, you know, it's not because that they don't know. Well, actually, that is the truth. It is because they don't know.
Yeah.
So this is all go back into why augmented intelligence has been our driving force for the last few years, and how we going in putting the right process, a bumper rail framework, and you name it, compliance requirement regulations, how does that being interpreted from the GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, and working with the risk management and the compliance officers, the auditor, that needs to tie it into the business objective. It must, right? Otherwise, where's the cost efficiency and cost effectiveness coming in? So it has to tie it into the business objective. And what? I think that 90% of that, they are not technically driven.
Right.
So that is where we're having trouble. So,
And
and
they're going to want to know from the KPI and what's the ROI on our investment. That's what they're responsible for. How are you going to mitigate my risk, lower the cost of my risk if something were to happen, the protection of something happening, and why are we investing in these tools? So go ahead with your table
well,
there.
you're talking about tool, and that's why I want to bring this up. This is Deloitte's cybersecurity framework. And by the way, you know what? I don't know. Maybe that's new to me. There is this saying threat detection and threat hunting. Maybe that is a new term in the industry. I don't know, but I just love, how big company always reinventing the wheel to make something new out of it. So that goes back into the marketing team. So if you look at, the threat detections and threat, it's spelled it with THREDEAD. So maybe my English is bad. So anyway, the point why I bring this up is because that you can see that they put it into a periodic table. There is so many different. I know that's why I want to bring this up. I just couldn't help it. That's why I want to bring it up, not to laugh at them, if they're listening, but it's like, okay, what are we doing here? Why are we bringing this periodic table? Is this coming to be a chemistry
Right.
that we are working on that we
Why
need?
not? When we talk to the data scientists, they're like, well, you need to understand thermodynamics to truly understand data science. So we're like, come on. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Sean. That was my point, and I'm done with this now. So,
Well, on
and
that
my
note,
point, no, no, it's true. My point is just now, why are we making this more complicated than it is already is?
because it gets contracts. The more complicated you make it, people need to understand it, and if they don't, if they're not technical, they need to hire somebody to make it more simple. And this is one of the things that you talked about. We try to elevate cognizance. We try to make people aware of things that are out there, free tools that are out there. It doesn't have to be terribly complicated. It doesn't have to be terribly expensive. Look at how much money we've all thrown at cybersecurity over the last decade. And ransomware is still the leading cause of business loss when it comes to
And
cyber.
actually, phishing, right? That's another
Yeah,
one. It's
that's another
always
one.
that's on the leading. And phishing, a lot to do with human errors.
That's right.
95%, according to the World Economic Forum. And we keep advocating, to all our clients and audience, look, the cheapest way to start addressing cybersecurity is just go back you know half a meeting, whatever, whenever the meeting, just mention about how they can improve their cybersecurity posture at their own way. How does it relate it to their own personal uses on their own cell phone, on their own banking protections? Just treat the company digital assets as their own financial assets.
Right.
That just needs to be have a cultural mindset changes and shifting to be more aware of cybersecurity. It's not a technical thing we keep talking about. Now cybersecurity become basically a noun. It's just that being awareness of it. It's not a technical thing. It becomes like what I call it, like a taxation. It is a boring subject. Yes, sorry for those accountant that love taxation, but to me, it is a boring subject. But it is necessary. It's critical. It is very important to the organization. Why can't we just treat it like that and change the mindset, start the communication, and the collaboration will come? We have to look at it from a different lens, from a different lens, through this to
Yeah.
talk about this subject. Now, go back to the AI. I love to talk about AI.
No. Well, let me touch on something real quick. The numbers between the human error aspect, about 85 to 87% are from your employees clicking on things, phishing. The
Okay.
95%, the delta between the two numbers, really comes more into your IT staff and their human errors. It's not that they're negligent, they're errors. We're all human, we make mistakes. So, how do we identify those specific human errors, Stanley? And I think that leads into what you were going to talk about here.
Yeah, well, that's one of the thing is it's not, I don't want to turn it into a negative session, but that is the fact that we have, during the years of our practice, when we go into just to dive down why IT, professionals, administrators had become one of our worst corporal in the cyber, in the sense of cyber
Mhm.
attacks. It's not, sometimes it's not their fault, because the patch management, the updates
Yep.
that keep changing. And what we found, and in fact, that one of the customer challenged us, say, okay, you have an automated pen test tool, and I'm going to, they actually said that we're going to test you. So what they did is they actually put a site together, fix everything
Yep.
before we go in there, down to the latest last, the latest patches into the system.
Yep.
And okay, here we go. We do it unbiasedly. We do it no human intervention. We put in our platform. I'm not going to name names. And then we put in our platform and we left it and just let it run. Within a day, then we come back and look at the result together remotely from with our customer. And there was one critical error. And it would just happen to be that night. It was, updated on the patches, and it triggered one of the setting being, from on to off. That's
Yep.
all it takes. It's just one. Now, tied it back into the whole AI subject is why we absolutely need to talk about it, but it has to be driven by the professional, the practitioners, the operator, and to look at this from both direction. The automation would just help to speed up, to increase the performance. So yeah, we've been using automated pen testing for the last 3 years now. And yes, we continue to rely on it because it helps us to do the work a lot faster so can be more cost effective for our customer. But at the same time, it has to be, and that is another elevate cognizance, our own engineer, not just, from the pen testing, from also the pen tester, not
Right.
only from looking at the pen tester perspective to find the new things, but now they don't have to do the manual process, which is more accurate, more efficient. Yes, it's not as deep, but that is where it goes in, where they go in after the automated pen test is done.
Right.
And of course, that depends on the customer's budget. If they say, well, we just need to check the box, we just need to meet the compliance. Okay, great, wonderful. At that point, then he or she becomes the analyst to analyze it and map it into our customer's GRC objective. Now, that is something that they are learning, and we are learning from our consultant, our lawyers, and our ecosystem partner as well,
Mhm.
because we won't able to know it all. However, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to start from scratch just because we would like to sell something. We partner with people that who has the knowledge,
Right.
decades of the knowledge. So this is something where the AI needs to catch up. And by the way, because of this live event, I asked ChatGPT. AI has the potential to greatly elevate and augmenting teams to address the cyber talent shortage in several ways. And then that just go back into, oh my goodness, this is the fundamental we know from day one when we get into, IT to cybersecurity.
Right.
One, improve threat detection. Two, faster response time. Three, decision support. Ah, okay, decision support.
No.
That is where the contextual correlation can come in. So yes, AI has its position, but it needs to be guided along
Yeah.
with the process, and that will help into the security instant response, because we have done what this, since 2015, right? So we started this process in 2015, and how we reduce the detections and the resolution, not just responding but resolution
Right.
rate, because that we have the tools do its
Right.
job, including AI, identify that reduce the false positive. And right off the bat, that we were, within 12 months, we were able to reduce over 80% because we're utilizing the tool correctly. But now that's just reductions on the detections because we can eliminate the false positives and continue to guide it so we can train it. But and then how about the resolution side? Look, this is where the elevated connaissance comes in. Why we still need to guide those IT. Maybe they are just the desktop support people or server admins. Sometimes it's just they don't understand why we do things differently comparing to IT when it comes to cyber resilience. So this is where we kind of go from two ends or even three dimensions and come to the middle. From IT, yes, they always work on the IT system. We know that. Cybersecurity, they look at it, you know, parallel, but a little bit different,
Right.
because we have to. It's just that our level of defense is a lot higher comparing to IT, and we have to be more proactive. And there are lots of, a security incidents needs to be reviewed from a human perspective, and that's where AI can help. But and then there is another third angle from the practitioner point of view. I'm not even talking about the business executive. That would be the fourth dimension, but the third dimension is the compliance side,
Hmm.
which is still kind of, puzzle to a lot of the technologists. That's why we separate those, kind of separate those conversations individually, but and then how do we correlate them together is by using data. At the end of the day, let the data to speak the facts.
Right. Because they all have their own vernacular, their own terminology for the exact same ways of dealing with the risk. They just don't understand each other, and the data and the data visualization is going to make that a more common language. But how are we gonna bring AI into the governance side?
Yes, this is where we work with the ecosystem partner. First of all, let's just accept this is a journey. This is not going to be a silver bullet. Doesn't matter. AI is going to be around. I already seeing quantum computing. People are using quantum computing and put it into cybersecurity. Oh, come on. You know what? Just because
Right.
it's there, it doesn't mean it's being cost effective that everybody can afford it. And even though it's cost effective, it doesn't mean anybody can go, turn it on. And I love to using car. People knows me, and I love to use car as my analogy. So first of all, look at it. You know what? Now manual transmission, people using stick shift, right? Back in those days, how many people can drive a stick shift nowadays? That is something that why is it in correlation? Because there are certain things that still require manual process. Well, people ask, why are you driving a stick shift? Well, just because it's a different type of car than an
Right.
automated car, than an automatic transmission, then coming to now the autonomous
Right.
driving, right? So
Right.
great for old people like me. I talk about I'm so excited. In 10 years from now, I don't have to drive. Then I won't cause people accident, on the street because I might be blind at that point. But at the same time, that it needs a journey to get there. It needs a process to get there. Now, going back to answer your question, Sean,
Yep.
why is it, contextual understanding? Skilled professional pose contextual knowledge about an organization's unique system, processes, and threat landscape. And thank you for ChatGPT. That's the answer I got, right? So
Right.
yes, this is the part that where even ChatGPT understand this. They they need the human process. They need to the professionals to understand the organization's unique system. And that goes back into we coming into a full circle from yes, IT speed up the performance, help to bring down the cost, and digital transformations going from the older traditional industry to a newer acceptable to the new generations buying behavior and patterns. But all of that, it needs human process to guide the system to do its job.
Right.
And same thing with security incident response playbook. And I because I want to tie it back into it, so and then I'm going to shut up. So
That's
one of the things that we always talked about, AI, yes, it can help to put out that performance. It can, decrease the time frame. Why not utilizing it? But on the other hand, you know, the human being, we need to elevate the cognizance, including people who doesn't touch the computer system in your company, because you don't know when that social engineering would come into aspect of it. And that is, well, the old day is dropping a USB on the floor and people will pick it up and plug it into the computer. Of course, it doesn't happen anymore. I hope it doesn't happen anymore.
and
But
it
in
still
fact, that
does.
I
Still
yes,
does.
still does, and people still allowing the USB port being, accept anything. So uh, that is the type of shifting the mindset, right? So now, at one point after we produce a bunch of USB keys, we were going to give it away at our conference. Oh, and then that I think it was G20 hack from the Russians were passing the USB, so we got stuck with a bunch of USB keys, so I still have them, right now, but they might become going into museum pretty soon. So that is the type of knowledge we need and interacting with the AI generative, answers, if you may.
What we're seeing there on the governance side with the auditors is the use of ChatGPT and the AI there is really nothing more. As you said, it speeds up the process. It speeds up their template, their format, the things they need to think about and do, but it still is not anywhere near capable of writing out exactly what the organization needs for their internal operations, for their industry, for their regulations, and the regulations change in interpretation on a consistent basis. Add to that the advancement of technology that they're bringing into the organization and spinning machines up or spinning applications up or adding a new SaaS, and it changes the way they have to have those policies written and the procedures written for the organization to operate properly. We were talking to somebody recently on the compliance side, and she said the first thing she does when she gets with a client is, and she's coming in dealing with the auditors, let me meet with your security team. Let me meet with the cybersecurity team. Why? Is the question she gets. Why? And people don't understand that the GRC are the laws of the organization. The security and the IT staff, they're the cops on the road. They end up getting tagged as the guys that always say no, 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 no. They're the guys that hand out the tickets. They're only doing the enforcement of the company laws and the regulations. That's it. If the company needs to operate differently, it needs to be with the governors. But you see this marriage of the two, they have to work together in order to secure the organization. And AI is easily facilitating one side right now. It's got a ways to go to facilitate the other group. And what we're seeing is the automated platforms uh, to, I guess they're taking the interpretation of the regulations and identifying where some weaknesses are in your procedures, or at least maintaining that you have all the documents you need to meet the regulation requirements. But it's still a long ways from being able to write those things for you.
And that's the point that why I said mentioned earlier there is not enough data because
Right.
it's just still relatively new. We have been doing that in the last few years, but we only one company. Part of why I'm sharing this architect on this, it is something that we created in
And that's our
2018, 2017.
yeah, our integrated accelerator.
Yeah, so this is something that why I said it took us years to come back into our is because a lot of it people didn't even understand about why cybersecurity. We
Right.
talk about SIM all the time years ago, and yes, for some of the professional in the larger enterprise that they are, of course, they know SIM. So one of them is a famous. We laughed about it in turning into from a network monitoring tool turning into SIM. Great, all kudos for them and but at the same time it's nothing new but it's just that the processes
Mm,
to get to the AI and how the AI generated the answers or solutions still need to be vetted into making sure it meets the contextual informations, the organization's objective, how they perceive threat. And one of our CRG member, our group in LinkedIn, called cyber risk governance. And they come back to me and say, Stanley, you know what? We need to look at this, from a white paper perspective, because that how they handling the security from a global perspective, and right now it's just all coming in from globally into a SOC.
okay.
From the SOC perspective, they have no priority into what is more important related to where that incident came from. And
Right.
the relations that they are looking for, it's on the local regulatory issues now. So this is something that, as an example, why the contextual correlation is very important, because now we can address it in a different with the different priorities. And Sean had talked about, and as I said, this is what 5, 6 years ago we put together, and that's why I share with you because it's old. So all of these, this is something that we talked about. The AI engine is just one of the three components into mixing it into a what we call it integrated accelerator. And now dive a little bit deeper, and of course this is just like acquisition of the data, how we ingesting it, how we normalizing it, then we can do the correlation. And now why I said we're going backward is because now, just like Sean said, why do you need to talk to our cybersecurity expert? We couldn't even acquire the data. And that's what we can we go back to ground zero every time that we hit into that wall. And in fact that I was in one of the um, company that they do university ranking. They've been doing that for 40 years. I was invited by them to attend their Edge Data Summit. This is all, you know, I, I, I I think I'm the only one of the few private company, and I feel like I'm an oddball because I have the smallest company out of all of them. They are primary universities, research education, research institutes, and of course, some a few big giant tech companies. I feel I'm an oddball, and I got invited to be one of the panel and speaking about cyber risk. And I challenged them. Basically, I said, look, all the universities in their own network infrastructure, they have their own CISO. But as in being a university, why aren't you sharing the data, the metadata that you don't think is sensitive, to let us, the startups, and I call myself the retro startups, because we keep reinventing the
Yeah.
wheel, right? We keep, looking at the new process to try to make it more efficient, cost efficient. So we keep looking at this, but we need a data. How come nobody can, come in, basically sharing this type of data? Now, it's a challenge for you, my audience, our audience. If you know any university that is willing to work with us, please let me know. Reach out to us,
E-
so
e-
that way we can.
even
Yeah.
larger corporations. I want to touch on this real briefly, Staley, for the people in the audience that are not technical, and we keep talking about data. ingesting data, getting data, collecting data. It's metadata, what we call metadata. I- In uh, in common language, that is nothing more than uh, the analogy would be you sending a letter to someone. The metadata is the mailing address and the return address. That's it. Not the
And the
contents of the
postage
envelope
stamp and
and the
when did you
postage stamp,
send it? Yep.
but not the contents of the envelope. And that's important to understand for people when we talk about wanting to be able to work with your data to help build this open source tool. That's what we're talking about, metadata. And there's just needs to be more metadata.
Right. And how we jump to correlation, what we do in talking about contextual correlation. This is where we looked at from the processor standpoint, when the company comes back with this metadata, how do they make the decision? And the executive, the technologists, and the governors, what are the pain point for them? What are the key objective for them? What do we need to address first rather than later? And some of them, it needs to be over a period of time. For example, that we work with, our customer's customer, and have them to be ISO compliance, and they give them a bunch of requirements. Yes,
Mhm.
initially that our customer took them a year, and tried to get to it, and then their team come back and told us, yeah, we are 70% ready, we just need about 20-30% help. Okay, great, you tell me whatever you want to tell me. However, we still got to do the baseline assessment, because we need to know whether your 70% is really our 70%. But that's already a contextual correlation right at that point, right at the beginning.
Right.
So we said that, okay, you're 70% wonderful. Let's take a look at it. But by the time that we peel off the onions, and actually, we didn't even peel off the onion. We just deployed, the automation tool we call Sarah, Security and Risk Assessment. Nothing fancy. It's just Sarah for easier to talk about. So when we deploy Sarah, in 2 days, we already find out not just from the network perspective, but also some of it from the system perspective.
Mhm.
And yes, our server come back and say, well, this is only 26%. Of course, we didn't send that report to them. We said, well, here are the vulnerabilities. Let's go fix them first before we do anything else. Well, here are the critical. So this is the part that, and then of course, move on to another conversation on a monthly basis. We touch base with the executive, and this is where we're finding out more and more and more about, whoa, there's a lot of things that you're not in compliance for your customers requirement. And the funny thing is, we always getting this type of resistance every single step, whoever we talked about, maybe just because we are a third party vendor. So rightfully so, they have to have this defense mechanic built up. And this ties it back into 10 years ago. I said, vicious cycle of self-destruction.
Mhm.
And because of this type of defensive mindset, and go back into the beginning of our discussions, yes, a lot of executive getting tired of us IT guys or technologists and cybersecurity people, and coming and keep selling to them. So that's why that they are being so upset. And now, to the point that this vicious cycle of self-destruction, because the IT and the technologists might not able to present the result to them that they can understand, to the executive that they can easily digest, and to in their head they can calculate the cost justifications for themselves. So it's always the communication from the technical people. Oh, we need this tool set, we need this money. On the top, it's like, okay, show me why, show me where it can help. But and then that's where the breakdown start, just simple as that. That's why that we need to do this initial assessment when we engage with the customer, to baseline assessment, so
Right.
we can capture those data to present it to it as a neutral party to the technologist. Okay, we give you a little bit time to fix it, and here are the priorities you can fix it. But and then later on, a sharing, we do another assessment to give a better looking result to the executives. Otherwise, we will lose all our friends. So otherwise, so we'll give that to the result. Look, here are the data comes back, and let's have a communication together. And yes, I have to be honest. Sometimes the communication, it can turn really, frustrated in the beginning. But if we keep our objective front and center, well, what are we trying to address? We just try to meet this objective among the three groups of stakeholders, now including the governance and the auditors and the risk managers, and to look at the three. It used to be fragmented silo objective, but because now we have data as a common language to talk about your company, your organizations, and then we can start collaborating. And because of the urgency of cybersecurity, the governance and the regulations, people are, being more aware of it. And that's why that, I know, Sean, you have a comment. So
That's all right.
from the fourth column correlation, correlations, this is where we start. And then it has to go back into the presentations that all those roles needs to understand what we're talking about. Yes, it is a spaghetti sauce. And yes, it's this, the sausage ingredient is all in the middle. But
Yeah.
some of the people, they don't need to know about how we make the sausage. They just need to make sure that the sausage tastes nice.
People are going to look at that chart and wonder why is risk calculation over there on the right side after all the spaghetti making, all the meatball making in the middle there. If you remember back when we talked to Fred Doyle, he was talking about risk. Risk is something that can be measured and calculated. You know, terrorism is not a risk. Um, you need to be able to measure risk for it to be a risk. So that calculation there on that, you need all the data, you need all the context, you need to correlate the context to be able to calculate the risk. And that's some of what Sumya, who's also a CRG group member um, and an enterprise risk management consultant, he mentioned here in the comments. The need for AI to help bring context and correlate all this data, all this diverse data that's coming in. AI can facilitate that to give it context to your organization. If it's just out there saying, here's the risk, here's what you need to do, it doesn't really matter or mean anything except to the broad community. When you are able to put context and correlate that data to give it context to your organization, AI can be a very effective tool to address the specific needs of that organization. We talk about it when we do our automated pen testing. The scores of the vulnerabilities we identify don't really mean anything. It's how those risks present themselves because, in the vulnerability assessments, that low 5.3 risk might be right there next to the crown jewels, and that 9.8 may be the key card access to the building. Well, human IT is going to patch that 9.8 first. Well, that's not addressing the greatest risk to the organization. And then some of what AI and automation is able to do is to facilitate that augmented intelligence that you talked about, Stanley. Bring that information to someone to take action upon it that might have otherwise been overlooked.
Yeah, and while addressing Sonia's comment, thank you, by the way, Sonia. I asked ChatGPT. Okay, so one of the thing is the comeback is automated triaging, and let me just read the answer first. AI can automatic autonomously triage and categorize alert based on predefined rules and criteria. Why I laugh is because when I read it, it comes onto my mind. It does not including GRC process. It is a GRC objective, and now is more front and center as an enterprise risk management.
Right.
And we already know that is going to stick around for years to come. Let's just say. And according to World Economic Forum again, which going back into item number 8 in the next 2 to 10 years, is one of the top 10 risks on number 8.
Yep.
Cyber
Yep.
criminal, misinformationals, and now with the AI is going to get worse. And yes, we're not going to talk, we don't want to go into that path about this informations, but at least that we need to look at this, cyber crime is our
Right.
enterprise risk, right? Okay, and then it continued by automating the initial stage of instant response, tied it back into our conversation here. Yes, and that's why that we have already partnered with this company. I don't know what, 4 or 5 years ago, and
Yeah.
using the AI sim
Yep.
and to help to automate this initial stage of instant response. And because of that tool set that we already able to eliminate, I just talked about it earlier, and within 12 months we were able to eliminate 85% of that type of security incident detections,
Right.
reduced by 85%. That's a pretty significant number. And then on the resolution side, we were able to reduce by 88% in terms of how fast we can resolve those resolution. Again, that is the part that needs a process being built up, a collaboration. Now, I haven't finished yet. Two more sentences. AI system can prioritize alerts, enabling human analysis to focus their attention on critical issues. That go back into Sonia's point. Thank you. And this reduced the time and effort spent on investigating false positive and allow teams to allocate their resource more efficiently. That's our point.
Yep.
Yes, more efficiently. But at the same time, is it being effective to the organization's objective? That is also our challenge to the AI world, right?
Right. And what we see oftentimes is people are putting these tools in and they don't do the work to fine tune these tools to do exactly that. Even just because it has AI doesn't mean that it's coming in pre-configured, ready to go out of the box. It's not plug and play to secure your organization. You have to fine tune it. It needs to
Oh, great
understand
point.
what is normal.
Great point, Sean. That reminds me another, painful experience that we
See,
have
this
to
is one
go
of the
through.
things that happens when you're old, Stanley. You have a lot of good stories. You've
So
been
I have
around a
to
long
share this. I
time.
have to share this. Burning it. It's burning inside. So yes, you're talking about those tools. So let's just say your organization can afford to buy the cars, Rolls Royce of the
Yep.
world, right, or the Bentley. But and well, let's put it into the perspective. Go back into my early analogy. Let's just say you can afford to buy a Lamborghini, Bugatti, but some of them are manual shift,
Mhm.
manual transmissions, because it's a different type of car. Do you know how to drive a stick shift, a manual transmissions? And that was the analogy I used. And now a lot of big companies say, oh, you know what? I want to protect. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm worried about my job. And the company has the money about spending it. I'm going to buy with the biggest brand. I can get the best name out there. So, going back to old age, I won't get
Yep.
fired by buying Marbell, right? My telecom days. So I won't get fired by buying Marbell. That is the type of mentality we keep hitting. And that needs to change, because if that's the case, cyber attack will continue to happen. Yes, you might have a job, but for how long, we don't know. And besides, does the management really know what's going on? And I can live with myself with that when something happened to my client. So that's why I always blame it on myself. I don't know, some people can live with that. But at the same time, it's like, what we are trying to do is just to share the message and try to change this mindset. So yes, you may have money to burn and you can buy any type of those tools, but those tools, yes, it might bring you efficiency, but can it bring you effectiveness
Right.
and even cost effectiveness? And of course, that is subject to the organization, how they interpret that. And we already helped them define it into 4 categories, just trying to put the right data into the right bucket. And that's our role as data analytics and data science, to making sure that through the lens of data we can find out what are the weakness, what are the deficiency. You might have a greatest tool sitting in, and that ties it into why I laughed earlier, because some people commented to me some of those sim tool or the risk management tool, I need to have a team of 20 to operate those tool sets
Okay.
because it's just so complex, so user unfriendly. It getting to the point that is they are shooting themselves on the foot after they bought it. And the sad story is one of my friend have to do an early retirement because he wouldn't take my word for it. And yeah, he went ahead and bought those Rolls Royce, and he has to take an early retirement. And unfortunately enough, you know what? Yes, we are the small guys. We try to advocate for this SME environment, but it needs to have a mindset change. And look at this is like your accounting department. How do you work with the accountant department? Show me the numbers, show me the figures. And
Yeah.
that's what we need to start
Yeah.
the journey.
And AI, from my perspective, AI right now is doing nothing more than, you know, removing some of the repetitiveness. You look at it in auto manufacturing, robotics came in and took over the mundane manual human task. Did that take people's jobs? It did take some people's jobs. It forced people into learning more skilled tasks to assemble the car because they couldn't do everything with robotics. But it forced them into more skilled tasks. What we're seeing here is AI, the use of AI is really, as you have said, augmenting the intelligence, facilitating the speed at which things are made aware to the organization, uh, to adapt and change the organization, but it's doing things that otherwise your staff are they're not using resources well. They're not using money well. They're not using their time well. You're not using your staff well to do some of these tasks where AI can come in and do them faster and provide that augmented intelligence to allow them to do more high value tasks, tasks that you need them to do, tasks that are specific to your organization that they understand better than any tool is ever going to understand to help
Yeah, and
do
then
the job and secure the organization.
and another analogy to make it easier to understand is I saying that it's like the professor giving you the question and the answers, but at the same time you got to show me all these calculations.
Yeah,
What is your thinking process? How do you get to the answers? Yes, you might get the answer from AI, but is it accurate? Do you know what it means? And going back into the earlier conversation, so the AI might give you an automated remediation solution, but is it correct? Because if it is not correct, if nobody vetted it and nobody evaluated it and just applied it, it could trigger a huge consequences. And now
right.
I see, even our own engineering asking AI to produce the scripts, for some of the, programming. But at the same time that they say it is only about 80% accurate. And we need to be getting into the 100% accurate. So yes, it can help to write the 80% and leverage that 70, 80%, but your team has to do the 20, 30%. Don't rely on it. And this is pretty, I think that is a pretty accurate, statistics, the 80-20 rule, so it never go wrong. But the point is that 80% can trigger 80, that 20%, if you don't do or your team don't, just rely on AI, it could trigger 80% of the problem, right?
Yep. Sheila made a comment, another CRG group member, as the recovering attorney in GRC. That's pretty good, Sheila. Um, AI, as an attorney, even, you have staff. If you could have a paralegal that was an AI tool to do 80% of the work for you and do the 20% that you need to do, that's very specific to the case, to the matter, and your client or the organization. It's a far better use of your time and the organization's resources that they're providing to you by using AI. I heard recently, AI is artificial intelligence until we trust it. Then it's just automation. And that's one of the things that we've seen is that the AI tools that we have trusted are automation as the way we look at them now. It's just automating things. And that automation, and I have this conversation with security engineers within organizations. Look, what we do is not try to replace you. we're trying to keep you from having to do the basic boring stuff that you know, like you, Stanley, you were over talking about AI a long time ago. They're over doing some of the basic security things over and over and over again. If any of us could figure out a way to, how many are stay with your car analogy? How many are still changing your own oil at home? I know somebody's going to comment, I still change my own oil, but most of us take it somewhere. Why? We're outsourcing that skill to someone else. Don't take care of my own car. I take it to a shop. Um, so, AI is very similar to that. Use that tool. Find ways to augment your staff and your resources. It's not replacing your staff and resources, and don't expect it to for some time. We're talking about artificial intelligence. We're not talking about deep deep network learning with neural networking right now using quantum computing. We're
Well,
still a ways
I
off
mean,
from that.
and besides the point, I mean, not to replace them, but the whole industry, the whole world, it's anywhere between 2.7 million to 4.3 million shortage in
Right.
cybersecurity professional.
Right.
Why not engage with your team, your IT team, and have a different type of discussion? How can you, as the management team and the business executive, to shift their immediate role, to leverage AI to shift their role little by little so they can become the cybersecurity professional, or what we have been calling is really InfoSec,
Right.
information security professionals. And that's where, another terminology that basically IT, it's no longer valid anymore. I keep thinking IT, informational technology, what does it really mean? Yes, cybersecurity, it means something for me now, it becomes a noun, but informational security professional or practitioner, that is really where we are. Well, it's this type of shift is already started a few years ago.
Yeah.
Well, again, because I'm old, I know it. And but at the same time that it goes into something is really I think it's practical. The organization needs to have that mind shift. Otherwise, your CISO will not be there for a very long time. I'm so sad to say because I just had another conversation with our CRG members yesterday, and he basically said he had enough because he keep fighting the upper management for the resource, and they keep saying that yes, we believe is adequately staffed, but meanwhile he has to work 80 hours a week,
Yep.
including his holiday, because there was a major threat and major cyber attack in the industry called Log4j, for those people that who remember those painful lessons. We know this has happened. We signed up for it. We don't mind. But at the same time that we have to talk about this really open-mindedly and change the culture and elevating the connaissance by having this type of conversations, share our video with them if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And it's going to be on LinkedIn, and ask them to join our CRG group. So now that is the sales pitch comes in, Sean.
Yeah, and again, the cyber risk governance group on LinkedIn is a group of like-minded professionals, people that we curate to become members of the group. Uh, they are governors, internal auditors, risk management professionals. They are technologists, IT, software, cybersecurity experts.
Yeah, and
And
somebody just commented, what about cyber insurance? So that we got to tie it in, because the cyber insurance we're talking about is the last line of defense. Now, how do you get to because the cyber insurance company, they don't really care about what you do in the IT cybersecurity. They just want to see the result. But unfortunately, that they got a big hit. That's why they turn everybody down now, and people are having a tough time. They just need to basically making sure that you are in compliance on what they need for the application process. Now, of course, that's the part that we also working with the cyber insurance company, I mean industry, to look at it and being more proactively. Well, we put together a list, self-assessment application list, combining with 4 insurance company. Reach out to us, and we can share that with you.
I think in regard to the AI usage and the risk that it poses to organizations is really more in that data loss and the data exfiltration, the data sharing. And that was the thing we saw in big organizations that started scrambling to change their policies with regards to employees using ChatGPT, is they were putting proprietary information about the organization into ChatGPT to get information or to do part of their work. The questioner is correct in that that does bring up cybersecurity issues, information security issues related to data privacy and uh, ex- exposing certain information. So where does that cyber liability coverage come into play? And yeah, that's probably an area they're thinking about. The cyber insurance area is a whole different kettle of fish, so to speak. And we have seen significant changes within that industry and what their expectations are and where that's going. Um, the third part of our group are the executives. These are non-technical people, the people that are ultimately looking to be, they're not looking to be, they are ultimately being put in the position of being personally liable for incidents within their organizations
Well,
as
with that
the
happy note,
officers
John,
of the
it's time up to
yeah.
wrap it up.
So if you're interested in joining our cyber risk governance group on LinkedIn, look us up, request to join, and we look forward to having you there, being part of the conversation. We're always there. Everybody in the group is there to share information, answer questions. If you have anything, ask away. Or Stanley and I are always available. If you have any questions from us, you can find us in the LinkedIn group. You can find us on at netswitch.net, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, and we'll bring those comments back into our LinkedIn and CRG group to discuss them as well. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.